it was a young generation. In every major movement, uh, all the wealth is being stripped away.
So everybody, welcome to episode 1 of the Ask series. My name is Orina. I'm located in Kenya, in a small town near a mountain called Nyeri. That's where I'm located. And my co-host of the day is, to be honest,
Hello, hello, good brother. My name is Hayelom Tadesse. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. And I did grow up in a small town in Africa, in a small area, part of Ethiopia and Tigray. Uh, Obviously, there's cities in Abyuk.
yeah.
But also really grew up in a small little village in Sudan. It used to be called Tuala before I moved to the US.
Really? Okay, that is new. I didn't know that you grew up in Sudan. So I guess this was before the whole North versus South Sudan, because I think
Yeah,
South Sudan came.
before that.
South Sudan came in 2012, was it? I think it was 2012 when Sudan split North and South.
I don't know. I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was around that time.
I don't
And
know.
I left Sudan in 1993. So it was a few years before that.
It has changed a lot. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So, Hello and I are going to be talking about a couple of things. We call it the Ask series very intentionally. We have a few questions that drive the conversation around topics that we have shared interest in. Yes. I'm curious about what you think about this, Halem. So, do you think there's more pressure on African youth compared to youth elsewhere in the world? Like kind of like a pressure to build Africa. The potential has been seen. People talk about the potential in Africa, and there's a lot of weight on the youth to kind of get to that state, that kind of pedestal we're being put on. Do you think there's a bit of pressure on African youth compared to the Western world, quote unquote?
That is a heavy question to start with. Uh,
Mhm.
do I believe that the youth in Africa have a higher level of pressure? And I'm assuming you're thinking from transforming the country, whatever country they're with that, to carry the weight of political movement, corporate movement, and just creating better lifestyle for their community, if you will. I believe they have a higher level of pressure, a higher level of risk, but I also believe they have the highest level of impact they can make relative to, I think, youth around the world. So if
Yeah.
I gauge it based on those three factors, I do think, yes, whether they know it or not, I do have that higher level of
Yeah.
pressure because if you look at most of the Western and Eastern countries, they have a certain level of maturity right now, whether it's in their infrastructure or what have you, right? And so, the youth doesn't necessarily, they can challenge and try to change status quo, what have you. Um, I don't know if they have the same level of pressure to transform their country in the way that I think a lot of these African countries have to because they've been exploited. There's a lot of legacy leaders there that exist, really hard to uproot. Um, and I don't know if you have that same challenges. It comes in different forms, but I do think on all three levels, I believe they do have a hard level. Sure.
There is a lot of exposure that is coming either by what we're able to consume. Yeah, it's kind of like becoming a global village, what we're able to consume. And also, a lot of young people are getting the opportunity to travel outside the country. And it's kind of one of those things. It's like we can't see what is possible. It's like we're going to the US, going to countries within Europe, and we're seeing the level, how accelerated development is. And you're like, we should be able to do this. So I do agree. There is a bit of pressure, but it's a good kind of pressure. It's like a good,
It is.
in a good way. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? As I think about it, I don't know if I would use the word pressure. The more I'm like settling in the question and what it means.
Yeah.
I believe they have the highest risk and the highest out of any youth. I really, that's what I really believe. the risk is, um, depending on the country, you may not have the same level of regulation. You may not have the same level of protection. I know other countries are facing, especially the U.S. right now, is going through a lot of change, right, and turmoil in some cases.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think they have the high risk because of the lack of protection that perhaps other, developed people, where you want to call it, mixed hard stuff. And some of the African countries have dictators or what have you, or leaders that have been around for a really long time. It's just really
Very
hard
long.
to
Yeah.
remove them or to get them to step aside.
Yes.
So there's that risk of they're really putting their life in danger when they're trying to create, such a, depending on the kind of movement.
Yeah.
And then to me, the opportunities also is where I want to focus.
Yeah.
If you think about where we are from a technological advancement, if you think about, their ability to tap into knowledge and access to information globally, just with a phone or just at their fingertip,
Yeah.
their ability to be able to grassroots level really transform a lot of these countries that are looking to try to build infrastructure. They're looking to improve education, looking to improve medical access, looking to create new job opportunities, and really most important, protecting the natural resources. To me, that's where I think they have the biggest opportunity. I wouldn't look at it as more of a pressure. I would see it more of a opportunity to change and create something, not only for themselves, but for many generations to come. So, I know something we talked about in the past is how many countries in different forms have just tapped and was taken advantage of a lot of these African countries by depleting them of their resources, um, you know, depleting them of their riches and their wealth and what have you. And so that makes it really difficult for the youth to find opportunities for themselves. So that's where I think we have a chance, to continue to educate the masses and just show them, they can at a ground level completely transform a lot of these African countries because they can create, the infrastructure using the latest technology that is available today. Whereas a lot of these Western countries and what have you that are relatively mature, there's a lot that they need to overcome to take advantage of the technology that's coming. Because that exists today. So for me, it's an opportunity to think that in what the youth has. And
I think pressure is it's I think underlining. I need to stop seeing it as it's pressure and more it's kind of focusing on the opportunity for it. There's high risk, but there's also like a higher reward that's coming with the high risk. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you look, for example, look at it's a young leader there, young, brilliant leader,
Sure. Yeah.
very focused, understands the opportunity that's in front of him and his leadership team, understands what it means to create an organic, identity that is
Identity.
created by them, for them, and means a lot and is deeply rooted, like who they are. If you look at the changes in education and medical services, the innovation, the protection of resources, um,
Oh,
that to me, that kind of mindset
yeah.
is definitely, I mean, that we need to capture those opportunities as they come. And he is he's of age, but he's a very young leader, um, and has a vision, right? And even if you have an opportunity, but but you don't have the right level of vision and direction of where you want to go,
It
it's
does.
going to be hard. So he has that. And that's why I would use him in other leaders, of course, but as an example of what it means
Yeah.
to capture that opportunity and create something new for your own.
He's a very good example. I think having vision for African leaders is not just about having the vision, but kind of letting your people see the vision and believe in the vision. Someone who I consider deeply as a great African leader, incidentally comes from Burkina Faso as well. Thomas Sankara, back in the previous century. Yeah, he was radical, not in a negative way. like radical in the sense of like uprooting ideologies and getting people to believe differently. There's a lot of stories about him. Some of them are actually myth, like some of them are myth, some of them are actually factual. How he ordered members of his cabinet to, because people had these expensive cars and people are dying in poverty, and he's asking the question like, why? You know, it's like first principles. We like, what is the root cause of our problem? We have all these resources, we have the right people. What is the problem? You know, how can we change it? So I think it's good. And the contrast is we have another president who's been in power for 40, 45 years, you know. So there's kind of like how fast can you get your ideas implemented in such a system? So there's a lot of work to be done, but
Right.
yeah.
So you have, I think, two different Africas happening right now, right? You have the legacy of holding on to power and I'm not going to let go. I think there's a different approach and strategy to handle that. And I think that's where you have the highest risk, if you will, and the highest in those areas. But then you have the new brilliant minds and leaders that are shaping what Africa could be. And I think the youth should definitely be highly engaged in those because you have a low risk. Yeah, exactly. And you still have, high level of opportunity to make a meaningful impact and change.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think, whoever it is that is out there trying to, create this change that is really, really needed is being able to understand in which of those two are you. And that should inform you on the kind of strategy or the level of pressure you want to put on, the local leaders, community leaders, religious leaders, whoever has influence and power to make, some changes. So being able to understand the, and it would be great too if somebody eventually out there can create a graphics or show us, which is in the old age, which is in the new age, which countries are somewhere in between, so that, the youth understands where they can quickly make that change and impact. Because it doesn't have to be in every country. There has to be enough country where it overshadows the old way of doing it. And then eventually those regimes hopefully will either understand and change their ways or most likely could be challenged by the new generation.
Could be challenged by the new generation. That is true. I feel like across the world, and mostly in third world countries, there's this whole Generation Z movement. And it's coming, I don't know, I feel like it's primarily very political, but I feel like that's going to expand into other spaces. It's going to become more of like an economic warfare, not in a negative word of warfare, but challenge. It's going to challenge the economic status quo. We're going to start challenging the educational status quo. Like, why are we running our educational institutions this way and not this way? So, I don't know. I feel like it's positive. It's coming along good. So,
and even if you look at, so this is it's a conversation we were having with a brilliant leader. So I was talking to a very influential leader here in the U.S. And who has made a significant impact especially in African American youth by introducing them to STEM, engineering, and other practices. Awesome. And you could see it. You can map out where him and his organization and just they as an entity have made those changes. One of the things we were talking about is if you think about historically, who has caused some significant change, whether it is at community level, at state city level, but whatever, it's always been youth. So I'll use this in life as an example. If you think about, yes, there were other health and community leaders that were involved, but if you look at the faces, a lot of them were younger, on the younger side. Dr. King, for example, and there were many others, but as an example, he was in his 20s.
Yeah, true.
When you're thinking about the movement and the voice and the strength of the community that was behind him, it was a young generation. In every major movement, it's the youth that typically has the time. Because we gotta be honest, as you get older, more responsibilities, you just don't have the time necessarily. Two, they normally have the energy, high level of energy. The world hasn't put you up yet. They haven't dealt whether it's good or working in organizations or what have you.
Yes.
And they also have the courage and the ability to take that risk at a such an age.
True.
And they also organize really, really well. And so
That is true.
I mean, that's how I want to think about this is, look back in history and look at points in time where you had significant change in the world. In many cases, you're more on the younger side of the generation that have caused that change. And it could be for many reasons, whether it was because you just got fed up with the system, they they saw the opportunity, they want to seize it, whatever the reason of the rationale.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been thinking a lot of young minds in Africa. Like, you don't have to wait for somebody to come in and save you. Obama, Obama, when he says, we are the heroes we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, a lot of the answers we probably have in front of us. We just don't have them. Or sometimes we don't have the organization or the confidence to really think we can do it. And so that's what I would encourage. You probably know a lot more than you think. You probably have more than you think you do. And you probably can make an impact greater than you're even dreaming or thinking about today.
Sure.
And so being able to help them and help them realize they could shape, yes, there's risk, but they can shape the future for themselves and for their brothers and sisters. That's what you need.
I guess a lot of learning needs to happen. And people shifting their mindset and seeing the possibilities that are there. Okay.
So, for example, right now, the youngest population in the entire world is in Africa.
That is true. I'm very pleased with the average. Yeah. We have the average population. Yeah, it's like 18, 17.
18, 19, and some are in the low 20s, like very, very low 20s. But I think the median age is like 18 to 19.
It is so easy.
If you look at most of Europe, most of Asia, you look at, the US or what have you, the median age is really, really high. They're age adults, right? And so being so young and having this unique opportunity to shape your future, you got to figure out how to tap into that mindset, into that group, and just help them. You're right. You got to educate them. It's about awareness. It's about showing them that they can do a lot more than they think they are. It's a plus.
Come sliding into the next question. So more young people are getting more access to education, more access to work opportunities. I mean, they have Africans working from Africa, working for corporations all over the world, or African-based companies run by Africans having participants from all over the world. It is, in the sense of the word, global village. So Africa is known for cultural identity. And I mean, that applies everywhere. That applies the way of life, how we relate to each other. And that goes into the workplace as well, right? How people talk to each other, how people relate to each other. There's a cultural identity of community that comes in. I was thinking some time back, do we risk losing that? Because a lot of Africans, and maybe we need to challenge this a little bit, a lot of Africans are modeling the corporate setup to be a very Western, it's kind of modeling against what we know, like the standard of how a corporate environment is, how corporate regulations are structured and how they work, vis-a-vis an organic one. So I don't know if we need to take a step back and think of how is the African way of doing things. Let me use an example. I haven't worked with any Japanese partners, but the Japanese are known globally for having a way of doing business. It's a Japanese way of doing business. Right? And I feel like we don't have an identity for an African way of doing business, right? We kind of just pick what exists in the corporate environment out there as it is. Do you think it's something worth thinking about for Africans, right? How do we want to run institutions, businesses, corporations in an African way, very deeply rooted in culture? You know what I mean? I hope it makes sense. It's kind of somewhere.
No, you're onto something. It's a really good question. It is something I actually think about a lot. I have a vision for how I think. Because I think about this, meditate, dream about it a lot. Especially probably like the last 15 years. It's been an ongoing process for me, even probably even a little bit longer.
Okay.
I think for me, for what I believe is Africa has, I know we're talking about the continent as a whole, but within the, the context of that, each country, within the country, each, I'll use the tribes or the regions or the social structure there. I think Africa has the most unique identity out of any other continent in the world. We just don't realize it. If you go back to even whether it's science or whether it's religion, it all points back to civilization and life starting in Africa, right? You can argue what Africa, but it's no longer a debate. That's where it all started. And so we've been, if you think about it, we've been creating that experimenting in our identity since the beginning. But so we do have a very unique identity. We should have our own unique way of doing things. Africa should have its own unique way of doing things. I don't think, other than best practices and leveraging technology and using that in a more positive way, I get that part. We can leverage. But in terms of how Africa should run, or different countries with different business leaders, or whoever is going to create new avenues, I think should be done in Africa's unique. I would not replicate fully the capitalist system. That's a different topic we can talk about, but it is profit driven. It's not people driven. It's not driven based on how do we create a better community? How do we create better opportunities for our youth or what? It's very profit driven. That's just the reality of it. That's why it's capitalist system. And so in those systems, it's easy to take advantage of the masses. Again, U.S. is a really good example of that. It's a capitalist system. The wealthiest in the entire world. It's not even close. The amount of wealth or riches that exist here. Now, billionaires, technology and all that system, medical system and so on. But it's ranked one of the lowest on almost every sport. If you think about in terms of human experience, and so whether it's education, medical, whatever it is, it's considered. It's not leading. It's not number one, other than military riches. I don't think the U.S. is number one in anything else. It's because of the mindset. Because it's not community mindset. It's not community driven. There's a huge profit motive. I think, but there are good parts of the capital system that I think that nations should take advantage of. But I believe they should do it in a unique way and creating. I love what you said. Create their own identity, because to me, Africa is huge when it comes to. I'll use my community, Ethiopian community, or grew up in Sudan, or even when I visited Kenya. Big on community, big on supporting each other and neighbors taking care of neighbors, children, and what have you. And I don't think we should lose sight of it, because the more wealth you gain, the further away you get from them, right? Because you're isolating yourself and you're creating your own cluster of groups. And again, that's going to happen no matter what's great. To me, I think Africa should create its own identity and could leverage some of the good things these other nations are doing, but be more community mindset. Because the reason why I think that is, for many, many years, many decades now, all the wealth is being stripped away from all these African. It's all going out. And if we apply the same systems and it's still owned by Africa, guess what? Instead of the wealth being pulled away and out of Africa, it's going to be pulled from the people and those who control the powers of Africa. So you may contain it, but it will continue to funnel to a small group. So these youth or whoever it is that is creating these movements should think about whatever initiatives I want to create, whatever innovation I want to bring to market, whatever business I want to create, have a more humane mind and think about how can I impact and benefit as many people as possible. You could still be wealthy and pay people more. You could still be wealthy and give people better access to education and healthcare services, right? So for me, there's a fine line that I think hopefully Africa can help solve by thinking more about the broader community. I got to be careful how I say this. I would blend somehow how China has been growing and morphing, not the entire system, but how they think about 50 years down the road, many years down the road. Like in the US, very excited. It's term specific, it's midterm specific, it's 4-year term, and there's this constant like whiplash of changes.
True.
If you think about these other nations who caught up and have the potential to potentially surpass the US, they're thinking 20 years, 30 years.
They
40
caught up
years
for
down
that
the road.
reason. That is true.
Yeah,
They
India,
caught up
for
for that
example,
very reason. Yeah.
when we're creating some nonprofits here in the US, I know we're digressing
Yeah.
a little bit for the
Yeah,
Ethiopian
good.
community. I was studying how has India just continued to expand across the world. No matter what part of the world you go to, you're gonna find individuals from India that are
Yeah.
creating, unique markets or are some of the highest paid individuals within the markets
Yeah.
that they are moved to. One thing I noticed is they actually have a strategic plan as a nation. And I saw this one website. If I find it, I'll share it with you. It was like a 30-year roadmap in creating an ecosystem in Australia.
Really?
They literally had a 30-year plan and
Yeah.
very solid, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's, entrepreneurship. I mean, it spanned across I think it was like 12 category.
Yeah.
They're thinking 30 years down the road.
Very long time. Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do in our own unique way is how do we create, yes, leverage the best parts of the capitalist system, best part of the new innovation and technology, but keep, the community in mind. Make sure they're benefiting because you can gain a lot of wealth while still taking care of the masses, right? And then in addition to that, additionally, it needs to be like many, many years forward because wherever you build them out, if you haven't thought about how it can play out, again, you cannot control what's going to happen in 10 years. But if you haven't thought about and try to predict as best as you can or create a foundation today that can last that long, if not longer, then anyone who come in with severe just wipe out.
They're like, I do everything.
The revision, exactly. And so that's how I would kind of look at it is create our own unique identity by first keeping the community in mind.
Yes, it comes down to finding the right balance. It has to be a hybrid of, it can't be extremely capitalistic. It also needs elements of capitalism. It's kind of that health balance.
Somebody needs to study this, by the way. Somebody needs to study this.
Yeah.
There's young minds out there that can probably look at and say, what was the most optimal way that the capitalist system was used? What was the most optimal one that, the socialism was used? Because they all have good and right. Neither one of them all good or all bad. Now there are some, practices we don't have to go into. Some of those that can be really frustrating. But some of these systems that have existed, there's always, a good side and a bad side to it. It's which version of that are you going to implement? But also, how do you learn about the best part of those systems and create something that is going to be beneficial for everyone? So, it would be nice if there was some young out there that could say, hey, here's how we saw the capital system applied the best. Let's take elements of that. Here's how, because again, no matter how capitalist society is, there's still social services, socialism that is embedded within. And to me, in the US, I equate that to free education wherever it's available, expanding medical services, and so on. Social security service. There's a lot that is truly, more of that, socialism type of playbook, or at least offering services, while still having this umbrella of, the capitalist society that we live.
Yeah. As you were speaking about the value community and why we tend to forget how big of a role it has played in our history this far. I was listening to a podcast recently, and someone was saying how Africa was structured before. It was almost entirely community based, right? And for example, if I needed to go to the market or I needed to go to something, my neighbor would babysit for me for free. Like it was expected. I would be like, hey, I'm going to somewhere. I drop my baby at my neighbor's. No questions asked. It's expected. It's a community. Someone's child is everyone's child. And someone was like, we fought so hard to quote unquote advance. And now the same neighbor who would take care of my child for free, I now have to pay them. It's kind of like this irony. Like we fought so hard to quote unquote advance to only retract in some way. It's like you're moving forward, but you're also moving backward in some way. So I guess we have to keep some elements of what has worked for us and also just pick what is right from what has worked for other people.
I was thinking of two quick examples of why I think the, using the community as one of the pillars for whatever, journey we embark on. If you look at why that's really important, right? One of the things that especially the Western world was really successful at doing, they did it here in the US, during the time of slavery, what have you. They did it when they were exploiting Africa, when they'd start to divide different tribes and what have you.
Yeah.
They understand the strength of the community coming together. That's why they prioritize dividing them based on social status, based on whether they were dark skinned, light skinned, whatever it is. They came up with so many different ways to divide and conquer. That to me is a signal why community is probably the most important part of this. If we cannot figure that out, it's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be easy to come in and divide us. And then the Tower of Babylon. If you think about, even God realized, whoa, when these humans, you see them come together, something, there's nothing stopping them. Literally, even again, I know, I don't know what everyone's religious philosophy and what have you. But again, that's a really good example that shows you the strength of the community and what it means. And to me, that's probably one of the biggest message out of this is making sure that youth, these young minds that have this energy, time, and hunger and desire to change. That's the most important thing. I've always thought about this, and because that's why I'm involved in different spaces and different organizations. Because I realized one person cannot do everything. One person cannot change the world. But one person can go in different spaces and plant seeds. As many places as possible and inspire as many minds as possible. And then you have a ripple effect and being able to make a long lasting change. So for us, it's about thinking for how many of those minds can we help plant the seed and encourage? Because it's going to be on them eventually to make this. This could take whatever we're talking about and envisioning. It could take 20 or 30 years to do. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it can, but really hard. And so we need to expose as many people as possible and allow them to kind of think about it in their own spaces, and then eventually you have again a massive ripple effect across different areas and spaces, and hopefully they can come together, right? And so I think that's why this is really important to create awareness, right? Because your awareness is gonna help you create a certain perception of the world, whether good or bad, and that perception would hopefully lead to some kind of action for you to make a change.
We have there's a Swahili saying. I've forgotten the last bit of it. I think it says kidole kimoja hakivunji chao hakiui chao. It says if like one of these like tests, if you want to finish it, one finger is not gonna do it. You need two fingers. And I may be misquoting it. It's not clear in my mind, I know, but the whole vision is you can't really do it alone. It's kind of, I feel like we're circling back on community again and again. And that's the fact that counts learning a community. That is true. That is true. It kind of is like taking central stage. When we started this conversation, community wasn't the center piece in my mind. But I feel like the more we're talking, the more community is coming.
Yeah.
Whatever it is we're doing or trying to do, community has to be the center of it.
If you think about what the world has done to Africans and to Black people.
Yes.
And I know this is controversial, but I don't care. It's the reality of what I've seen. It's my truth of what I've witnessed. And I will always try to be as transparent, as honest as I can in whatever we're talking about. They have convinced the world that we're dangerous, that we're not smart, that we're not kind of fully human. And I mean this sincerely. Like there's history, there's data, there's ways that people are Africans can treat around the world. They've convinced us that we are all these things that we're not. And I go back to that basic truth of we need to break that, and not allow our youth or Africans to feel that the world can see us however they want. But they've created these definitions. No matter where you go, black people are feared because we're considered dangerous or violent.
It's a narrative.
And historically, if you look at who has created the most violence, not us. We were the recipient of the violence. It's crazy the psychology and the perception that has been created of the first people. Some of the most creative, diverse genetic pool that has ever existed, creative minds. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, if you look at Africa, I mean, he looked at it at many spectrum. He goes, the smartest person is in Africa, the oldest person in Africa, which is also is in Africa. Where is that?
You don't
the lightest person, the darkest person. If you think about all these, even the shortest person, one who may have the lowest IQ, whatever. But all of these exist in Africa, but we're considered, what they look at us though is on all the negative side. Oh, they're not as smart, or they're more violent, or all these things. And is not the reality, right? And you could just look at what opportunities we're given, whether we're in Europe, whether we're in the US, whether we're in some of these Eastern countries. It doesn't matter. They look at us and treat it. Again, I'm making a big general statement, but that's just, I think, the history of reality happened. We need to show that is not true.
Yeah, it's kind of like we need to redefine the narrative. We need to redefine. And for some of these people, it's the notion is embedded in them just because they've heard it, just because that's the truth they know. That's the definition that has been passed to them. So I feel like the only people, because the same people who put the African or African Americans or Black people in general at that point of disadvantage are not going to undo that. They're not going to now change the narrative. So I feel like it's up to us to kind of show the world, like, this is our truth. This is kind of redefining what it means to be Black or African. It's not the stereotypes. It's not what you've seen. There's bits of that, but that's a very generalized assumption. There is this as well. There's this as well. We have the good and bad, just like any other race has. It's a pot that is not just very one-sided. So.
And we've lasted and survived the longest to date.
That is true. I think the oldest fossil uncovered is actually from Turkana. I think it's called the Turkana board, and it's somewhere incidentally near the border of Kenya and Ethiopia, right at the top of Kenya there. Turkana board is called. Yeah. So it's beautiful. We are a beautiful race, and I think that the world just needs to see. That.
Yes, and then again, even with eyes or what have you, all other ethnicities or race, come from Africans. I mean, it just does. Whether you want to call it evolution or adapting to environments like skin pigmentation and what have you.
Yeah,
that's where they're all. I hate to say this word, but they're all African immigrants that settled in different parts of the world.
That's very interesting. That is true. I think we get a lesser piece of history than we should. Whether it's in religious context, whether it's in any other context you want to look at it. I feel like the role of Africans is so narrowed down. The role that we played in history, art, in music, in this whatever format.
They don't even consider Egypt as a part of Africa to try to remove that identity from Africa. Like, think about that. Historically, if you look around the world, most people are like, Africa. They think it's somewhere else. Or they're trying to deny that fact. All that, the thing, the nose, like, that's not Africa. It's mind blowing, the level of effort that individuals throughout history has gone to discredit Africans. And I do think these conversations, we can get back to the basic of if what is in the Bible is true, that we are created in the image of God, then who was the first ones that walked this earth?
That is true. That is true. Well, this is a good way to wrap up the pod. To our audience, hopefully you enjoy this. This is gonna be the first of many that Hayelom and I are gonna be co-hosting. So it's gonna be a beautiful journey. We're gonna make some beautiful content together. So until next time, bye-bye everyone.
Thank you.